Okay, welcome everybody. So today I'm going to give a presentation titled An Introduction to Alchemy. And this is going to be, it's about 30 slides. And the reason for this is, as you know, I've written a book about alchemy. I talk about alchemy all the time. It's kind of my thing. And I've been out in the world, like meeting people and having loads of conversations with people about alchemy, learning about how they use it in their lives, but also answering questions on it and learning a lot myself as well. So I wanted to come back and get back to basics, do a presentation looking at an introduction to alchemy, what it is, what it isn't, and why I'm so obsessed with it and why I always love talking about it. And so I've gathered together some of the best stuff at a kind of a high level, and I'm going to talk about that for you today. All right, so an introduction to alchemy. Of course, you know all about me. I'll spare you an introduction to me, but this piece of artwork here is something I've made for this Hermes Wisdom of Hermes podcast, which you might have heard in already if you're in the Patreon group. I posted a preview of that. Yeah, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later in the presentation as well. All right, so let's get cracking then. You know about the book. If you're here in Patreon and you haven't read my book, I highly recommend that you do. It will explain everything and get you up to speed with all the things you're going to be talking about on here. Okay, you know, it's a book of two halves, right? There's the critique or debunking of modern science, and then there is this kind of exalting the ancient science. So I'm basically putting down modern science and lifting up the ancient science. And that was the intention of the book. And that's become what I do now, is what I've been going around talking about all over the world. All right. Now, one of the talks I gave a few weeks ago was called Alchemical Solutions to Scientific Problems. And I just opened with a list of big scientific problems, which all will be familiar with and we hear about a lot. And all of these problems of science all have alchemical solutions, because the problems wouldn't exist if we still had alchemy as our standard science. But because we have this materialist, modern science, it comes with all these problems and paradoxes and complications. So one of them is atoms versus ether, whether we live in a world that's constructed from atoms or whether we live in ether. These are two opposing scientific ideas. We're told by modern science that ether doesn't exist, that everything is atoms. But when we look to the ancient science, we see that it's all about ether, and they didn't even talk about atoms. And then, like what we talked about last week, the alchemical elements versus the chemical elements. So the periodic table, what are those? What are those made from? All those different elements, how do they correspond with alchemy? How are the chemical elements different from the alchemical elements like fire, earth, air, and water? Then we have the issue of the globe Earth, or the plane Earth, the geocentric plane versus the heliocentric globe model. A really triggering subject for a lot of people, and still something that many people don't know anything about, actually. And I'm guilty of this because it was like 10 years ago I started looking into flat Earth, and I tend to assume a lot of people in this scene already know about it. But I've come to learn that actually still there's loads of people that have just never looked into it at all. And a lot of people still get really triggered by it. But it is a really, really important scientific problem that needs to be resolved. And a lot of people saying it's like a psyop to divide the truth community and stuff. This is something I've been hearing a lot. But it's really not. It's just a really important scientific issue, and the people who are into it because they're passionate about it and they believe it's really important that we understand this. This is a big problem, big discussion. So then we have toxicological versus allopathic medicine. Again, so toxicological medicine is the idea that the body should be purified, whereas allopathic is the idea that we have to kill the disease. And this is the difference between like modern medicine and alchemical medicine. Then we have evolution and creationism. Alchemy is about creation. Alchemy has reverence for creation and looks to mimic creation, to learn from nature. And it's an art form, ultimately. But in science, in the materialistic science, we have this evolution where everything's supposed to have come about by random chance and mutations, and mechanical, deterministic processes. So then we have the issue of God, soul, and spirit, which in science we're told there's nothing to it. Those don't exist. They don't belong in science, at least. But according to science, those things do not exist. Hard science. Now, this is a problem. Again, in alchemy, not an issue. God and soul and spirit are all part of the scientific formulation of alchemy. And we have the issue of transmutation, whether or not one substance, or specifically one metal, can be transmuted into another type of metal. Modern science tells us, no, you can't do that. It takes too much energy. But alchemy says, yes, you can do it. It's all about just mixing and blending different metallic qualities. So then we have the hard problem of consciousness as well, the idea of like, where does consciousness reside? What is consciousness? This has been a long problem for materialist science. And then healing and personal transformation. Science doesn't have a lot to say about this, but it's a really big topic, and it's certainly very important in this awakening scene. And the awakening itself, which is a real phenomena that people experience. And again, modern science doesn't really have anything to say about it. But these are all issues that have alchemical solutions. Once we understand alchemy, we can understand all of these things a lot better. So I come from a background in atomic physics, nuclear physics, quantum physics, all the same thing, basically. And so I'm interested in fundamental science. And so I can look at modern science, what is fundamental, and look at ancient science and what is fundamental, and compare and contrast the two. So in the modern atomic theory, it asserts that all phenomena is reducible to individual particles floating in space and separated by an empty void or a vacuum. And of course, this was conceived in ancient Greece and then later revived in the 17th century in the scientific revolution. And the idea is we got this 4-3-2-1, right? Life consists of 4 forces: gravity, electromagnetism, strong and weak; 3 particles: electron, proton, neutron; 2 charges, positive and negative; and then 1 vacuum, which is the space between the atoms, right? The space in which all the atoms are spinning around. So the idea is the space itself is inert, it's just empty space, but within that, the atoms move around and they combine to make all the different forms, life forms that we see in the universe. Now, alchemy, it was called the art, the work, the great work, or the science of transformation. And it's a universal symbolic system of knowledge, explains all phenomena, eliminates all paradoxes, and can be applied to any creative process. A spiritual practice encompassing art and science. Now, in this conception, we have the 4-3-2-1 is the 4 elements: fire, air, water, and earth. We have the 3 principles: body, soul, and spirit. The 2 genders, male and female, or masculine and feminine, and then the 1 ether, which is the source from which all things emerge. Now, crucially, ether is a different conception to the vacuum completely. Ether is a fluid medium, and it fills all space and penetrates all things. The genders, they correspond. So masculine is actually positive, which means outflowing, and feminine is negative, which means inflowing. So we see this kind of a difference here of aliveness. So in the atomic conception, we just have the empty vacuum of space, which is nothing, it's just dead. And then you have the particles floating around. And so all kind of life comes from that sort of mechanistic process of the particles bumping around in space. But in the alchemical conception, we have the ether, which is like this vivifying spirit, like a living substance, which gives birth to all like higher forms. So it is the difference between a dead universe and a live universe, or a materialistic universe and a spiritual universe. So Manly P. Hall said, alchemy, the secret art of the land of Chem, is one of the 2 oldest sciences known to the world. The other is astrology, The beginnings of both extend back into the obscurity of prehistoric times. So Chem was the ancient name for Egypt, as we're told, and so they say alchemy is from Egypt. Now, this image here is a beautiful one, the Mundus Elementaris, the land of the elements, and it shows in the very center of the image, that is the human soul. And you can see it's being guarded, protected by two angels on either side. And then there's various rings around the outside telling us like different like layers of nature. So actually that blue ring in the middle there actually says nature or natura. You can see in the blue there. And then outside, there's actually 12 fields of knowledge. So you have grammatica, dialectica, rhetorica, right? Grammar, dialectics, rhetoric, music, physics, astronomy, arithmetic, geometry, medicine, jurisprudence, theology, and alchemy. So these are like the different like fields of knowledge of nature. And then out there we have the, what's that, Tria Saint Principia, the three principalities. I think it's the three realms, the three worlds, three principalities. So 3 realms in alchemy as well. So you've got the mineral, the vegetable, and the animal, or the 3 kingdoms. And then so outside in these outer rings, if you look in the top left, you'll see the names of the 7 planets: Luna, Mercurius, Venus, Sol, Mars, Jupiter, Saturnus. And then if you follow those rings around, you'll find the names of the archangels, which correspond to the planets. So this joins up the archangels with their corresponding planets. So you got Luna is Gabriel, Mercury is Raphael, and so on. And then down there on the underside, we have organs of the body, like the spleen, the liver, the stomach, and it shows you which of those organs correspond with the planets and with the archangels. And then in the bottom left here, this is the metals. Okay, so gold, silver, mercury, copper, iron. Again, all corresponding with those planets. And then round the outside of the sphere, you have the 12 symbols of the zodiac. And then outside of that still, you have the 4 winds, which we see in each corner, these heads like blowing breath into it. These are the 4 winds. So you see a lot of things like this from ancient alchemy, and what it's really trying to do is just capture all the essential wisdom, like all the most important fundamental science in the universe in a single image. And there's absolutely hundreds of images like this that kind of aim to do this kind of thing. Alchemy has been hidden, suppressed, ridiculed, attacked, and slandered by both religious and scientific organizations since the dawn of the scientific revolution. So like about the 17th century or so. Science dismisses alchemy as a vain, glorious attempt to transmute lead into gold. All right, so it's just basically a bunch of guys in their basement trying to make gold quickly in order to get rich. That's what, science tells us. Now, religion dismisses alchemy as evil, witchcraft, and sorcery. Both are wrong. Alchemy is called the sacred art of transformation, or the great work of perfecting both matter and spirit. It's a spiritual science that follows divine laws and principles. Witchcraft is the use of magic to impose one's will upon another by harnessing natural and supernatural forces. So that's a different thing. And sorcery is the use of poisons and spells to manipulate the masses. And actually, the word sorcery, the term comes from the Greek word pharmakeia, which is pretty mind-blowing. If you didn't know that already, the word sorcery has the same root as the word pharmacy or pharmaceutical. And so actually, when we get accused of sorcery for talking about alchemy, you have to turn around and say, no, it's modern medicine that is sorcery by definition. And your vaccinations, your allopathic medicine, and all this kind of thing. Alchemy is not sorcery. So alchemists are not witches or sorcerers. They are artists, builders, philosophers, and physicians, curious souls seeking to do good work, to become nature's most conscious collaborators. Okay. So this is an old image of an alchemy lab. I cannot find out where this image is from. I've tried, but I absolutely love it. It shows I guess, someone's alchemy lab, or maybe some conception of an alchemy lab. It looks very specific, but all of these, this is not just random, like some AI generated thing. Like all of the instruments and devices in this drawing all have a specific purpose, function. They tell a story. They have scientific knowledge contained in them when you understand what each of them are for and what they do. It's pretty amazing. And I have felt like I've always had some kind of soul connection to this work, because when I was a young child, I used to draw things like this all the time. Just like I would draw these elaborate chemistry labs and stuff just as I was doodling. So I think maybe in a previous life, I used to work in something like this. At least I'd hope so. So the alchemists were the first chemists, though their goals were mystical. In their quest for gold, they laid the foundation for the science of chemistry. That's according to Isaac Asimov. So alchemists invented chemistry. All the different devices and tools and processes, all invented by alchemists. Now, alchemy was not just a search for gold, but a search for understanding. It was the first step towards the systematic study of matter that we now call chemistry. The alchemists were the first to experiment with the elements, and though they sought the philosopher's stone, they found the building blocks of modern science. So this is just to make the point that alchemy is not some separate thing from modern science. It is actually like the wellspring where modern science came from. Alchemy is the cradle of chemistry. It is where the first sparks of scientific inquiry into the nature of matter were ignited. All right, so the alchemists, in their search for gold, discovered many other things of greater value. This, I think, is a really important quote to understand. We're told that alchemists were concerned with gold, and they were in some capacity. But by trying to understand how to make gold, they learned they could actually make things way more valuable than gold. And I've talked about this in some of my previous articles and videos, that something like music can be considered more valuable than gold because it has this kind of lasting value. It can be enjoyed again and again, year after year. It can be copied infinitely, distributed infinitely, and it maintains its quality. It doesn't tarnish in the same way that gold doesn't tarnish over time. So alchemy is the process of taking something ordinary and turning it into something extraordinary, sometimes in a way that cannot be explained. And yeah, so even just something like making music, right? You can start with something ordinary, like a piano or a guitar or some samples. And then through a whole sequence of processes and mucking around for the next 3-4 weeks, you then have this piece of music that's come out the other end. And maybe you can't quite explain exactly how you did it, but you just worked away and somehow you pulled it together. And Paracelsus said, alchemy is the art that separates what is useful from what is not by transforming it into its ultimate matter and essence. So this is the idea then that nature provides us with raw materials. Some of those materials are useful, some of them are not. Some of them are impure or toxic, but some of them can be purified. And when they're purified, they come into their ultimate essence, their ultimate capability, their like final form. And this is what gold is symbolic of. Gold is symbolic of the perfected final form of something. So take in music, for example, when you're making music, you'll have lots of like draft versions, right? You'll have the half finished tune that you started with or whatever. You'll have all these like different versions that are not gold, right? They're just musical projects, half finished like sketches, like drafts or whatever. But when it gets to its ultimate state of perfection, then that's when it's released to the world. That's the gold. So gold is not just about the soft yellow metal. It's symbolic of the ultimate state of perfection of a piece of work. And he said, alchemy is the secret of all secrets, the art of all arts, and the science of all sciences. Okay. And again, that image of Paracelsus there, like everything, all those weird looking contraptions, that blue one at the back there is definitely is a bit kinky looking, but yeah, these all have specific functions and specific things you can learn about when you start diving into them. And here's just some artworks I've collected over the years. I really like that one on the left, Der Alchemist. I've just spent so long staring at that. It's just so vivid. I feel like it just transports you right there. You can just imagine being in that room with this guy. It's, yeah, really, I really love this kind of alchemical art. And this one here, The Alchemist, Joseph Wright, 1771. This is, again, extremely vivid painting and is said to depict the discovery of phosphorus, which was discovered by an alchemist from distilling urine. So they were collecting urine from a boys' school, I believe, and running it through these distillers, and then out the other end came this glowing substance, what was the discovery of phosphorus. Allegedly, that's what it depicts. This one on the right is a more modern one, with some of the posters in the background those are actually from Robert Flood. And if you've seen that symbol on the book there, the circle with the triangle and the square and the circle inside, that's the symbol for the Philosopher's Stone. And I'll get to that in a future talk. So this one, again, I talked about it in a recent article, but it's just worth revisiting some of these things. The Alchemist by Adrian von Ostade shows a real sketchy looking sort of basement scene with a man like madly puffing away at his fire, trying to make gold from the lead that he's melted in his pot. But he's not a true alchemist. His house is a complete mess. His wife and children are in darkness and in squalor. And there's no books, there's nothing beautiful or inspiring. There's no good spirit there. He's not learning anything. He's just madly puffing and puffing the hot air trying to make the gold. And this is what scientists tell us alchemists were. This is what they want you to believe alchemists were, just these desperate little men just trying to make gold. But this is not how it was, okay? This is propaganda, essentially. Now, in this depiction of the Alchemist's Laboratory by Heinrich Kunrath, this is a very detailed image with, again, loads of things. Every single aspect of it is meaningful and symbolic, and you could spend hours like breaking it all down. There's all these like notes all over the laboratory. Different shaped bottles have different meanings and all this kind of stuff. But if we just look at 4 key areas, looking at the green, everything that's green. So you've got the tent on the left there, and then you've got the curtains on the right, which the curtains that's the forge. There's like ovens there, and there's like coal and stuff and things for working the fire. And then you have the table in the front here, which has a green tablecloth. Lots of things on there, including musical instruments at the very front and center of the image. So very important, like closest to the viewer is the musical instruments. And there's a little note underneath there that talks about how music is sacred and helps to connect us with God and keep us from falling into despair and negative thoughts and all this kind of thing. There's also like various, what looks like pills and powders and piles of stuff. There's a chair, nice chair there on the other side as well. That'll be the alchemist's chair. And then he's sat there like on his knees, like arms wide open in submission to God in front of the tent there, which would be an oratory. There's various different like spiritual messages and books in there with like sacred geometry and mathematics and stuff. There's like a whole library behind the tent as well. You can see going along the wall at the back there. He's got a solid library of books. And then like in the very center of the image, as you go way back into the center, there's a little green bed there. That's actually the bed. That's his bedclothes. So the bedroom is at the very center of the circular image. And the reason for this is because it's about the twofold. It's about the sexual energy. So the bedroom is obviously the place of intimacy and procreation. And the sexual organs are actually the center of the human being as well. So this is like a fractal, right? It's like, you think of it like the human being, it's like your internal, it's the state of your mind, but it's also your alchemical laboratory outside of your mind, like as within, so without. Yeah, so what we do with our sexual energy is very important, is central to our whole life. Similarly, we sleep for a third of our lives, right? It's like the inner sanctum where we retreat to. So the bedroom is really like the center of our whole life experience. But yeah, anyway, there's loads in this. The sign on the wall there is laboratorium, and this is a fusion of labor and oratory. So labor being work and oratory being prayer. So it's a place of work and prayer. But in modern terminology, we don't say laboratorium, we say lab, right? Just lab, because a science lab is just a place for work. There's no prayer. A laboratorium is work and prayer, but a lab is just, just for work. So this shows again the disconnection of spirituality from science. Like in alchemy, they were together, and then they became apart in modern science. Okay, and yeah, this just wanted to show you this. This is someone has taken the time to write a lot of notes about that image, and maybe one day I'll be able to like decode and find a translation of some of those notes. But there's a lot of wisdom encoded in this alchemical art. So the alchemists, like the smith and like the potter before him, is a master of fire. It is with fire that he controls the passage of matter from one state to another. So yeah, the fire element is not just flames, it's not just light, it's not just heat, it's all of these things. It's vibration itself, so even sound. So we talk about sound healing. Well, sound is fire in alchemical sense. You see, it's just low frequency vibration. All kinds of vibration are fire, and that is essentially the agent that transforms matter from one state into another. And we do this, of course, in our kitchen all the time. The alchemist takes up and perfects the work of nature, while at the same time working to make himself. So again, it's not about dominating or destroying nature. It's about taking what nature provides us and then taking it to its most perfected state or its ultimate conclusion. And that could be something like essential oils, for example. So nature provides us with plants, and then we can take the plant matter, and from that we can take it to the essential oil, which should be like its most perfected essence, let's say. Or medicines, plants, again, same sort of thing. It's like the plant by itself, it has some medicine in it, but we're able, as humans, we're able to take the plant material and make it into potent, perfected medicine that can be used in a medical way. Now, again, this isn't about, someone brought this up recently. They were like, I don't like the idea that man is superior to nature. And I said, I never said man is superior to nature. It's a different kind of work from nature. The work of man is a different kind of work from the work of nature, but the two are complementary. But it's definitely not superior, because nature is eternal. Nature is eternally returning, right? Everything of nature just keeps coming back again and is perfected in its essence. But everything man-made is imperfect or temporary or subject to entropy or decay. It's definitely not that man is superior to nature. I definitely don't claim that, but it's complementary in the sense that it's different work. We can do different work with our hands than what nature can do by herself. Okay, so what about some everyday alchemy, like stuff that we do every day that we don't even think about, we don't even realize we're doing alchemy, right? So cooking. Your kitchen is an alchemy lab. Like back in the day, people didn't have kitchens, right? They would just have a fireplace or something at best. But now we have kitchens with all these utensils and different kinds of pots and pans and ways of controlling heat and fire, filtering, baking, making tea and coffee, like brewing, fermentation, distillation. Cleaning, even just cleaning, right? Taking a mess and making it harmonious, right? Caretaking, harmonizing, painting, sculpturing, pottery, sorry. Yeah, pottery is a good one. Yeah, very early type of alchemy. Building and architecture, okay? Gardening, farming, making metals, taking rocks from the earth and making them into metal. That's alchemy. Fabricating tools and weapons, right? So you need a tool for something. You need someone who is actually capable of inventing the tool that you need, right? That would be an alchemist. Glass, so like stained glass windows or this kind of thing are all alchemical work. And even oil refineries, they get a lot of shit, but it's pretty amazing actually what goes on in an oil refinery. You have this crude oil, which is then distilled and separated into like many different fractions. And each different fraction is collected, a fractional distillation, and has different uses. Of course, used for pharmaceuticals and things, but various other things too. And then making medicine from herbs or making medicine from the earth or whatever it is, that would be alchemy too. The alchemists were the first medicine makers. So music, songwriting, even writing prayers and things like this. Right? This is alchemy. You're taking something ordinary and you're making it, you're transforming it into something extraordinary, which lasts through time, endures, and has value. Okay, writing books, writing poetry, prayer, meditation, just hard work, exercise, and self-improvement, looking to do better, do things better each time, like improving, self-development. These are all alchemical processes. Healing, purifying, cleansing, refining, renewing, refurbishing. Okay, these are all alchemical processes. You're making things better, you're purifying, you're enhancing things. So it's not witchcraft, it's not sorcery, it's not evil, it's not devil worship. It really is natural science at its core, the processes and the elements of natural science. And that's why I'm passionate about it, because I spent 10 years of my life in university because I wanted to understand fundamental science. And I didn't get what I paid for. Now, some years later, I've discovered that the ancients had science and it is really good. It is fundamental and it's valuable for people of all walks of life. Digital alchemy, this is the idea that the personal computer is a type of forge. So like the old style forges would be like a fireplace where you could control fire to have it at different temperatures and stuff. But now we have computers and the fire that we control is electricity. And through the very precise control of electricity, we're able to command machines to do all kinds of wonderful things. Our computer is a machine that can command all other machines. The electronic devices harness the power of electricity, or the fire element, and metal. The first metal tools were said to be the hammer and anvil, right? Just a lump of metal on a stick and a lump of metal, right? The anvil with a spike. And it's said that these tools imparted divine power to man. Actually, like our ability to create and use metal gave us a divine creative power. And you think from just a hammer and anvil, what we have now, right, with iPhones and all this kind of stuff, it's metal is real power. And yeah, we got to use it. We got to learn to use it and use it responsibly. So I like to say that using software, the alchemists of today transmute the lead of data into the gold of passive income. And because that's how I make my money, honestly, I take the data that I have, whether it's musical data or whether it's research data, and then I transmute it into a product, whether it's a song or a presentation or a book, and then I put it up for sale, and then I get passive income. And passive income is like gold because it's wealth that like keeps coming to you. You can't just have one thing. You've got to obviously keep making things and keep adding to your sources of passive income. But that is essentially what I'm doing. I'm transmuting data into products that people can enjoy, and that provides me with passive income, which gives me the freedom to do the research and create the things that I want to create. Now, alchemy is said to have come from a great ancient mythical sage called Hermes Trismegistus. And Trismegistus means thrice great or 3 times great, and is said to be a syncretic deity or a perennial wisdom teacher. So a syncretic deity is a deity that's sort of created when different spiritual traditions fuse together. So you have Thoth, the Egyptian Thoth, who was said to be the god of wisdom and the god of writing. And then you have the Roman Mercury, who again has a very similar role, god of wisdom, god of writing, the creator of music. Okay, Hermes is said to have made the first musical instrument. And so these characters, and the Greek Hermes as well. So there's the Greek Hermes, the Roman Mercury, and the Egyptian Thoth. They all have a similar function in the mythology, and so they've been consolidated together into this figure, Hermes Trismegistus. Now, I don't know if Hermes was ever a living man in Egypt, but there are stories that say he was, and he's credited for writing a great many books, including the Emerald Tablet and the Corpus Hermeticum. Now, he's called Hermes the Thrice Great because he is said to have achieved mastery of all 3 levels of the work of alchemy, which is theoretical, practical, and philosophical. Right? So the theoretical is like the mathematical, conceptual layer of stuff. Practical is the artistic, creative, the productive, actually making things, doing things with your hand. And then philosophical is the more literary or rhetorical or historical type stuff, right? Writing books and all this kind of thing. Yeah, he's said to be a master of all those, and which is where the name Thrice Great comes from. Now, with AI, I've been exploring this a lot and trying to think about AI in alchemical terms. And what I realized is it's actually the fulfillment of the alchemical dream. One of the things alchemists talked about a lot was the creation of a homunculus. Now, you think of a homunculus as this little kind of, I think of Gollum from Lord of the Rings as a kind of homunculus, this kind of like Frankenstein sort of creature. And I'm sure there probably have been some pretty gnarly lab-grown creatures in the past and stuff. But specifically, it's a homunculus is a thinking being born not of flesh and blood, but of art and science. And this is essentially what we have with AI. Now, I'm not saying it's a conscious being, definitely not. And this reason for that is because as conscious beings, we're made of water, right? The AI has no water in it, right? It's purely electricity and metal, right? Fire and earth, if you like. I don't consider it as a living conscious thing, but it is capable of thinking, which is, as to say, processing, right? It's capable of analyzing, retrieving information, chunking it up, analyzing it, and presenting it. Intelligence, but not sentience. So an algorithmic assistant that can adopt the personalities of great sages and masters from throughout history. Now, and as I've created an AI personality based on Hermes Trismegistus, and I've been using this for my alchemy research, and honestly, it's been brilliant. It's working really well, and I'm going to be releasing an audio podcast where I talk with Hermes about various alchemical topics. But so the thing Hermes is most famous for is the Emerald Tablet, or it's also called the Tabula Smaragdina. And this is said to be a emerald rock tablet with words carved into it, which contain all the secrets of alchemy in their most condensed form. So basically 1 page of symbols, and all the secrets of alchemy are like condensed in there. And this was said to have been penned by Hermes Trismegistus back in ancient Egypt. This is just an artwork where they've written it down. Maybe not the whole tablet. I think a lot of that is like notes and stuff as well. But there's many different interpretations of the Emerald Tablet. Isaac Newton did one, and various other alchemists throughout the ages have made their own interpretations of the tablet. So I thought one of the exercises I would do with my Hermes AI was to get it to produce a new interpretation of the Emerald Tablet. Now, I've done this a few different times because this is all experimental, of course, so I'll try it with like different AI models and things like that. But I have one now that I think is actually really good, and so I'm going to read that today, and we'll get into it now. So this is a never before heard Emerald Tablet translation by Hermes AI. Okay. This truth stands without falsehood, certain and absolute. That which manifests above mirrors that which unfolds below. Through this correspondence, the miracles of the One are accomplished. All creation springs from this single source through contemplation of the One, just as all things are born from this first matter through wise adaptation. The radiant sun acts as its father, the reflective moon as its mother. The winds of heaven nurture it in their womb, while the body of earth receives and sustains it. Here lies the origin of all perfection, the pattern by which the universe wills itself into being. Its power reaches fulfillment when grounded in earthly form. With patient art, separate the earthly from the fiery, the subtle essence from the dense matter. This is the alchemist's gentle but precise work. Watch as it rises from earth to heaven in purification, then descends again, transformed, now bearing the powers of both higher and lower realms. Thus will you hold the splendor of the entire cosmos, all shadows of ignorance fleeing before this light. This is the supreme power of powers, for it penetrates all mysteries and dissolves all obstacles. In this manner was the universe fashioned. From these principles spring all wondrous manifestations. Therefore, I am called thrice great Hermes, for I hold the threefold wisdom of creation's complete circle. What I have revealed about the sun's alchemical work is now complete and perfected. Okay, there you go. So just to finish up then, here's just some other notable figures from alchemical history, if you want to look into them. So you've got your Hermes, Thoth and Mercury. Aristotle, technically not an alchemist. Understanding his view, like fire, earth, air, and water and stuff, is definitely foundational in alchemy. Paracelsus, really good for the medical side of things. A lot of books by Paracelsus. Pythagoras, this guy Michael Meyer, that's the guy, the black and white one at the top there, German alchemist, did a lot of drawings and books. Isaac Newton. Now, I haven't read Newton's alchemical works. I'll maybe talk about him in a future thing, but there's sketchy stuff around Newton. He wasn't exactly considered a great alchemist, but he did write over 1 million words on the subject of alchemy. Arthur Edward Waite, the guy behind the Rider-Waite tarot deck, he's written a lot on the subject as well. Robert Flood, who I may or may not be the reincarnation of. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of stories around that now. Carl Jung, who was the first to bring alchemy into academia, as he brought it into the field of psychology through his studying of the unconscious, the archetypes of the unconscious. And then Jesus Christ, who actually many alchemists refer to Jesus as the master. So it's definitely not devil worship, because if it was devil worship, why would they refer to Jesus as the master? No, they refer to Jesus as the master because, as in the master teacher and the master alchemist, in that Jesus performed miracles which were essentially alchemical in nature. like turning water into wine, for example, which is fermentation. Yeah. And then, yeah, just some resources. The Kabbalion, a good one to read that has the 7 Hermetic laws. The Forge and the Crucible, that I referenced a few times there, really good book. Alchemy and Mysticism is more of a picture book. It's full of alchemical artworks. Emerald Tablet, Alchemy of Personal Transformation by Dennis Hawk. Is it Dennis or Douglas Hawk? Really good book, very visual book that really lets you understand the power of the alchemy of the mind, how to use your imagination and stuff. The Thoth Tarot is probably my favorite tarot deck as the Thoth Tarot. It's got a lot of alchemical information in there. The Red Lion, The Elixir of Eternal Life is a storybook, allegedly fiction, but it sounds like it was written from experience. I'll tell you that. There is actually a really good version of that on YouTube, an audiobook version you can listen to for free. The Red Lion, Elixir of Eternal Life. Hermetic Museum, Secret Teaching of All Ages. Initiation to Hermetics by Franz Barden. That's a really advanced book, actually. It starts off good, but it ramps up really quick. If you don't keep up, as you do the exercises that he tells you, then you just can't really keep up with the book because it just gets too advanced, but it's worth the read anyway. And then I just talked about Avatar, The Last Airbender, which was like a show on Netflix where there's a lot of alchemical wisdom in the writing of the show. They have 4 different nations, like a fire nation, an earth nation, a water nation, and an air nation. And the idea is that the air nation gets all wiped out except one guy, and that's like the last airbender. And I really enjoyed that, and I thought there was some good alchemy in there. And then Little Alchemy is a game you can play on your web browser. My kids really enjoy it as well. It's like you start with fire, earth, air, and water, and then you have to make basically everything else. So just starting from the 4 elements, you can create like hundreds of different things. Yeah, that's quite cool as well. Okay, that's all for now, folks. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.